Ken Walters here from Kenlock Mortgage, and this is the bottom line on mortgages. If it has to do with your mortgage, we're going to talk about it here. Today we're going to talk about the 5 points that determine how your mortgage actually works. Most Canadians fixate on rate, but rate comes after these 5 decisions.
A fixed versus variable is not a rate decision, it's a personality and cash flow decision.
Yeah, it is. If you're in a variable rate mortgage, it's going to change when the Bank of Canada changes the Bank of Canada overnight lending rate. Now, the overnight lending rate it's basically an exchange rate between banks, but that's how we determine what the prime lending rate is for individuals. So when the Bank of Canada comes out and changes its rate, so does your mortgage. It changes as well. They meet 8 times per year, so any one of those times that they meet, right, your mortgage rate could change. And if your mortgage rate changes, then so could your payment. And this is what I mean by could. We use the term variable really, really loosely. There's actually 2 types of mortgages that seem to have fallen under the name variable, okay? There's an adjustable rate mortgage and a variable rate mortgage, okay? Now, if you're talking about a variable rate mortgage, your payment doesn't actually change. Your payment's going to remain the same. But the amount of money that goes towards your interest and the amount of money that's going towards your principal payment on your mortgage, that's going to change. And this still comes down to that personality type. Because if you're the kind of person that is like, can't sleep at night, not knowing exactly what goes towards principal and exactly what goes towards interest, if you're the kind of person that's just like, that is just too much stress, yeah, variable, not for you. If you're the kind of person that just thinks like, yeah, I don't care, I would like to know that I'm getting the best possible rate out there. Well, guess what? When rates are going down, like, oh, you're golden. You're gonna feel great. But like what happened in 2022 when rates went up, you're not gonna feel so great because one of 2 things is gonna happen. If you're in an adjustable rate mortgage, then your payments are gonna go up like crazy with the Bank of Canada rate. Or if you're in a variable rate mortgage, your payment isn't gonna move at all. But the amount of money going towards paying off your mortgage, that's gonna change drastically. So that's called amortization. Right? The amount of time it's going to take for your mortgage to be paid off. Now, if you're in a variable rate mortgage and interest rates start to go up, well, you're putting less money towards the principal and you could be putting all your money towards interest. And if that's the case, you just put yourself in a rental situation. So the point is, back to our issue on personality type, if you're the kind of person that just cannot stomach the idea of not knowing exactly the way things are, how much goes towards interest, how much goes towards principal, if you can't stomach that, then a variable or an adjustable rate, either one, not for you, okay? Now, if you can stomach that just fine, that's not your problem. If you're looking at what your mortgage payment is and you're like, you know what, honestly, if mortgage rates go down, I want to benefit from that. Okay, well then, variable or adjustable would be for you. If you've got other investments, stock market, or GICs, that sort of a thing, if you've got another place to put your money, then hey, you're probably going to want to go with an adjustable rate mortgage because when the rates go down, you have more money. Your mortgage payment goes down and you're going to want to decide what to do with your money. If you don't have that kind of investment structure set up, then you're not going to be interested in that. Or you're not likely going to be interested in that. And therefore, a variable rate mortgage is a great option for you. As the Bank of Canada lowers rates, more of your money is going towards paying off your mortgage and less of it's going towards interest. So this is a great way for you to catch up or a little more forced savings created by being in a variable rate mortgage. So there's your variable versus fixed. That's the difference. And why didn't I talk about fixed? Because it's fixed. Nothing changes. And if you're the kind of person that's not going to sleep at night knowing that this thing could change, well then you opt for fixed. Fixed is a defensive position. It is you're signing up for a rate that you're aware of. You know exactly how long it's going to take you to pay off your mortgage. You know, you're not looking for a deal. What you're looking for is consistency. And that's what you get from a fixed rate mortgage.
Contract terms, so the fine print that costs people tens of thousands.
Yeah, okay.
So 2 people can have both a 5-year fixed at 5%.
Yep.
And one pays $3,000 to break it,
Yep.
and the other pays $28,000
Right.
because of the contract terms.
Yep, that is correct. So many different things can come into play when it comes to contract terms. So let's start off with the simple. What are the prepayment penalties? So let's say the interest rate differential that one bank charges could be different than the interest rate differential that another bank charges. And this is my favorite one. The difference between, you know, what we call the old days we called them monoline lenders. Okay, now these are the lenders that that brokers tend to deal with. They typically, and by the way, as a broker, we deal with banks and we deal with monoline lenders. So when I say brokers, it just means that there are certain lenders out there that you're only going to access through a broker. And so when we talk about a lender like that, when they look at the penalty to break the mortgage, they do what's called a discount to discount rate. Let's say you got that let's just say 5% over 5 years. You want to break that mortgage and you're 2 years into the mortgage. So the bank says, well, our 3-year rate is, let's say 4%. Okay. And then they say, well, based on the difference that we would have gotten on this contract, right, we're going to charge you the difference in interest that we would have made with you at 5%. You agreed to 5%. Now we can only get 4% for the rest of these 3 years. So we need to charge you the differential, okay, on the remainder of the term. And so that's how they come up with this difference, so what's called interest rate differential, IRD. What many of the banks do, they give you this thing called a discount. So when you get your mortgage, you know, they give you this rate, and let's say you got the 5% mortgage, and you're like, yeah, my mortgage is 5%. And you look at the fine print, and it says, when you purchased the mortgage, when you got the mortgage, it was 7% with a 2% discount, because they like you so much, they gave you the discounted rate, right? So now you got 5%. You feel super special, right? Because you're such a valued customer. No, it's not. That's not what they're doing, okay? This is a trap, okay? This is the bank trap. So what they do is they tell you that they're giving you 2% off their posted rate. You know who gets their posted rate? Absolutely nobody. They never give the posted rate to anybody. The posted rate is just it's a term. It's an archaic old term that they used to refer to what the banks used to post. You know, in the window, what they had in the window saying this is what our rate is today. They don't do that anymore, but they still use it in their contracts, and this is how it works. The posted rate that we gave you back in the day, when we said we gave you that 5% rate, is actually 7%. And now, if we were to sell that mortgage for the remainder 3 years, everything being the same, we can only get 4%. So we contracted you at 7%, and right now we can only get 4%. So now it's going to be 3% difference. And now they're going to charge you on the 3% for the remainder of the term. And that's how $3,000 with one lender turns into $30,000 with a different lender. Now, I'm not using specific numbers here, but you get the general gist of the idea here is it can cost you a lot more when you're going posted rate that they don't get to anybody to the current discount rate that they would normally deal with anybody else. If you cannot foresee you breaking your mortgage early, then it's not a trap. It's just a good deal, right? So they gave you a discount. If that discount's better than anything else on the market, then boom, away you go. You're
not going to say, no, it's a trap, I don't want it.
Yeah, right? Like, no, I don't want that amazing rate. Forget that.
You said nobody gets the posted rate. Well,
Well, why do they have it?
What do you mean nobody gets it?
Well,
what if I want it?
Nobody wants the posted rate. The posted rate is a really high rate that the bank says, like, this is the rate at which we are selling money. But because you're so special, we're going to give you this discounted rate.
Is that what you referenced as a trap mortgage?
That's the trap. That is the trap. That is literally the trap. Here's our posted rate. You're like, wow, that's really high. Oh, don't worry about it. we're going to give you the lower rate. Yeah, this is our discount. We're going to discount this rate down by 2%. Really? Whoa, look at me, special me.
Because we're besties.
Right? Basically, best friends give each other wicked discounts.
Makes sense.
Or we're not really best friends. Alternatively, I'm totally doing this to make sure that if you ever try to leave me, right? I want you to think of your bank. Your bank is sitting there going, listen, I'm going to give you this discount. And in the discount is this trap that says that if you ever try to leave me, I am going to screw you so badly that you're not going to want to leave. Because 2 years down the road, you find out that rates declined, everything's going well for you, you want to take advantage of the new rates on the market. So you call me up and you say, hey, Ken, listen, we're ready to move on. But I've got this wicked little thing in the back. I gave you a discount. And because of that discount, yeah, man, that's gonna, no problem. I totally understand. You want to move on? No hard feelings. Just pay me $30,000 and you can go.
So it's a messy divorce with your bank.
Yes, that is exactly what it is. It's a messy divorce with your bank. That's what the discount is. The discount sets you up for a messy divorce. What next?
Amortization. We touched on it a little bit.
Yeah.
2 mortgages with the same rate can cost tens of thousands apart.
When we say that a mortgage is going to cost more, okay, what we're referring to is the interest payment on that mortgage. The longer you borrow the money from the bank, the more interest you're going to pay. So if you and I both borrow $500,000 and we have the same interest rate, but I'm putting down, let's say I'm putting down $10,000 a month on that mortgage. Well, even after the cost of interest on that mortgage, I'm putting $120,000 a year on the mortgage. So I'm paying the mortgage off in the better part of like 5 years. $10,000 a month, $120,000 a year, $500,000 mortgage, right? A little over 4 years and I got the whole thing paid off. So yes, I paid interest on it, but I only paid the interest for 4 years because I was putting down so much money towards principal. The mortgage was coming down rapidly. Then on top of that, you got to figure in the very first year, my bill is already moved from $500,000 down to $380 in 1 year. Okay, now compare that to somebody else that, let's say, is paying $3,000 a month. They're going to pay $36,000 in the first year, interest and principal. They barely put a dent in our $500,000, right? So they're not paying it off in 5 years. So even if we had the same interest rate, and even if we didn't even consider terms, right, that it has to get renewed and interest rates are going to change every time you renew your mortgage, let's not forget about that. Let's just say the interest rate stayed exactly the same for as long as it took for me to pay off the mortgage. Well, if it takes me 30 years to pay off the mortgage, that means I'm borrowing this $500,000 and paying that interest for 30 years, right? Versus the person that paid it off in 5 years. So the interest rate could be the same, right? And by the way, I understand this is a massive exaggeration on two ends of the spectrum. But the point is to say the shorter period of time that you take to pay off your mortgage, the less it's going to cost you if interest is equal on two different mortgages. So 30 years versus a 25-year mortgage, well, the 25-year mortgage is going to cost you less, and the cost of a mortgage is interest only, not the amount that you're paying. Because the payment that you make on a 25-year mortgage is going to be higher than the payment that you're making on a 30-year mortgage. Okay? So if you take a longer period of time to pay off your mortgage, your mortgage is, and if the interest is the same, then it's going to cost you more to borrow. You're borrowing the money for a longer period of time, right? And so that's why amortization matters, and that's why a longer amortization will increase your cost of borrowing.
What do you think about the 100-year mortgage that Japan has? It's from the context of handing down your property, multi-generational.
Well, yeah, but why does Japan have this multi-generational need? because they had one of the biggest real estate bubbles burst. And I don't even think to this day, I'm not even sure if they've made back the value in real estate that was lost in the 90s. I think it was the 90s. I'm pretty sure it was the 90s when their bubble burst. And so people just went bankrupt left, right, and center. And it's like any other bubble bursting. Why would I want that? Like,
wouldn't that make it so much easier for me to afford a mortgage if it was 100-year amortization?
okay.
Isn't that more affordable?
So consider this, okay? So we're gonna keep using $500,000 because it's a nice small number. So today, some B lenders will allow you to go up to, let's say, a 35-year amortization. There was a time, for a short period of time a little while ago, that you get a 40-year amortization. So like I said, if you increase the amortization, the payment goes down, but the cost of the mortgage increases, okay? So you're looking at a house that costs $500,000. The most you can get for a mortgage is 30-year amortization, let's just say, regular mortgage, okay? And the banks come out and say, hey, guess what? You can get a 50-year mortgage now. Well, that's gonna reduce the price. That's gonna take that $500,000 mortgage, it's gonna make it a lot more affordable, right?
Yeah.
Okay, absolutely. But then what's gonna happen to the price of the house? The price of the house is gonna start going up. Because if everybody can get a 50-year mortgage, then it's easier to pay for that house with the 50-year mortgage. So now other people are gonna, instead of paying $500,000 for that house, they're gonna say, well, I want that house, so I'll pay $550,000 for it because I can get one of these 50-year mortgages. Great. So now that $500,000 house has just gone up by 10%. For what? Nothing. That is inflation. Now you come along and say you're going to buy this house for $550,000. Okay, so what do you think happened to the house just like it 2 doors down? It's now worth $550,000. And if anybody wants to buy that house, they're going to have to pay $550,000. And if they can't afford $550,000 on a 30-year amortized mortgage, they get the 50-year mortgage too. Okay, no problem. Now, what you've done is you just inflated the market. So who's better off? All you did was take the same amount, like you've taken the same product and made it more expensive. That's the only thing that's going to happen with that. It made it more affordable for like 1 or 2 people, but then all the prices go up. Good for the first person who bought it, crappy for everybody else.
We can move on.
Yeah.
Lender selection.
Okay.
Banks versus monolines versus credit unions.
Mm-hmm. So a monoline lender is a lender that deals with mortgage brokers. So one line. They're not open to the public. If you want to get a mortgage through First National, for example, you get a broker to help you get that mortgage.
You can't just go to First National.
You're not going to go to First National, no. They deal with brokers. The main difference between them is the way that they charge on prepayment privileges. Are you benefiting from, and by the way, when we talk about monoline lenders, they typically don't have branches. So they're going to be, in today's day and age, you're talking about the electronic banks. And, think like Tangerine is a electronic bank. First National, doesn't have branches. MCAP is another one. These places don't have branches. But then let me ask you this: when was the last time you went to the bank to do your banking? You don't need a bank branch to deal with your mortgage. Okay, and frankly, these monoline lenders that have these virtual branches, they are super efficient. They provide you with everything that you would need, and frankly, most of them are backed by the banks themselves. So now, finally, credit unions. Now, credit unions are super interesting because they'll be specific to a geographic region or a type of borrowing. So, for example, farms. There'll be credit unions that specifically deal with farms. There used to be credit unions that specifically dealt with different branches of work. There are other credit unions out there that are regional. And so it's very difficult to get mortgages in some regions across Canada. But a credit union that is very comfortable in that home region, they'll lend no problem. So credit unions, I would encapsulate credit unions to say that they can act just like a regular bank. They fall under provincial rules, not federal. and they are also regional in their risk tolerance. So you might find some benefits in a credit union that you won't find in one of the monoline lenders or even in a bank.
Who gives flexibility and who gives restrictions?
Credit unions are still what we would call prime lenders. Okay, so they're like basically they're no slouches. Okay, they are looking for AAA credit clients. You have to have a good credit rating. Like you're not going to a credit union because your credit is suspect, or we can't clearly establish what your income looks like. But there are things called we call Alt-A lenders. Okay. And Alt-A lenders or B lenders are lenders that are a little more flexible, okay? And when I say they're a little more flexible, they have a product, for example, called stated income. And so for people who are self-employed, a stated income product is excellent because what it allows you to do is state your income. But just like it says, right? It doesn't mean that you're providing no information, but when we talk about verifying your income, what we're referring to is what income you have disclosed to CRA. Okay, so when the average person who works for an employer gets a paycheck, and that paycheck has deductions on it, when we're trying to figure out what your mortgage, how much of a mortgage you can get, we use a thing called your gross debt service ratio or your total debt service ratio. Now, that is a ratio of expenses versus what your income is. And when we talk about income, we're talking about your gross income. So we're not talking about what you got deposited into your account. We're talking about what's on your employment contract. They said they hired you to work for $95,000 a year. You don't get $95,000 divided by 26. You get $95,000 divided by 26 minus EI, CPP, federal tax, provincial tax, and at the end of it, you get peanuts to go home with. We're not evaluating your income based on the peanuts. We're evaluating your income on gross income, on the $95,000. If you're self-employed, well, that might look a little bit different. So if you're self-employed, you could make, let's just say you made $95,000 and then you showed some write-offs. By the time you were finished showing all your write-offs, you had a net income of, let's say, $30,000. Now, we may know that a portion of that income went to pay for your car, your cell phone, many other things that are similar to the employed person, absolutely. But you see, your verified income still only showed that you made $30,000. So go try and get a mortgage showing that you only made $30,000. You're gonna have a real hard time. So what's your alternative? Well, that's where the Alt-A lender comes in and the stated income product. On a stated income product, you can use your bank statements to show that you do actually bring in $95,000 over the course of the year. And we can then show with some reasonable deductions, so reasonable things that anybody in that industry, whatever your given industry is, we can deduct a certain amount. Let's say you end up with maybe $70,000 worth of net income, and that's a lot easier to handle getting a mortgage. The other thing that they'll do is they will have fewer restrictions. Some more flexibility in gross debt service or total debt service ratio. Those ratios are much lower at the banks than they are at an alternate lender. More flexibility in the way we accrue your income, we can get you qualified for the mortgage. Now, very often people will say, yeah, but I want the lower rate. Why would I want this higher rate at this alternate lender? I want the good rate. No problem. Makes perfect sense. Everybody wants the low rate. However, the self-employed person doesn't pay taxes on the $95,000. They're paying taxes on $30,000. So, if you want to go to the regular bank, do you want to pay taxes on all that money? Or is it cheaper to use the write-offs and have an incremental, a small little increase on your mortgage rate by going to an Alt-A lender? I got to tell you, if you work out the numbers, you'll take that Alt-A lender every day, all day. What next?
Prepayment privileges.
A prepayment privilege is the ability to pay off your mortgage early or a portion of your mortgage early without any penalty. So if you add that up and you do it diligently year over year, you can drastically reduce the amount of time it takes you to pay off your mortgage. The Manulife One is just one example of that entire system. It's just encapsulated into one program. TD has a flex line option that would allow you to do the same thing. Scotia has the STEP program. Even MCAP has a program also similar. So any of these banks that have a line of credit like connected to the mortgage would allow you to do this. Or if you're just real wealthy and you have 20% cash in the bank and you could just drop that down on your mortgage every year, you can do it without penalty. That is a prepayment privilege. So very often you'll get like 10, 15, sometimes even 20% per year that you can prepay on your mortgage without penalty. We talked earlier about interest rate differential, okay? And so with interest rate differential, you have to compensate the bank for the interest that they would have lost on the mortgage. But they bake into the agreement that you're allowed to each and every year pay a certain amount of the mortgage off. So let's say you've got 20% per year and you have a 5-year mortgage. Well, within 5 years, you could pay the entire mortgage off because you can pay 20% per year.
Do a lot of people ask you about that? Like your clients?
Ask about the prepayment privileges?
Yeah.
Like literally nobody. Like, I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say nobody because I had a client recently who we did actually put in the Man One, and it was because that was their main concern was like, we want to pay off our mortgage quickly. And I wouldn't, just because somebody says they want to pay off their mortgage doesn't mean that I immediately jump, oh, definitely, let's put you in this product. You want to take a look at their spending habits. And their spending habits actually dictated that that's 100% what they were doing to begin with. So we just put them into this program because it was going to help them do exactly what they were already doing, but they were just going to do it more efficiently and faster.
Who benefits most from aggressive prepayments? And it seems like everyone would.
Who benefits most?
I mean, other than the bank. Any client, though, would.
The bank benefits from a prepayment as well, because when the bank gets that prepayment, they take that money and they put it right back out. It goes right back out the door and gets loaned to somebody else. So the bank's not at a loss when you pay them back. Does the individual benefit from a prepayment privilege? If that's their strategy. If their strategy is to pay down their mortgage and they're not looking to invest their money, then yes, they're benefiting from a prepayment privilege. But if your mortgage payment, if your mortgage interest rate is 3%, and you could put that money into an ETF that generates 10% per year, well then putting it on your mortgage isn't going to save you any money. It's actually a loss. So it didn't benefit you at all. It saved you the 3% on the mortgage, right? But it cost you the 7% that you could have gained if you had put it into the ETF. So to simply say that somebody benefits from prepayment privileges, yeah, I think that's just it's not a very nuanced perspective. It's too simple of a statement.
That's all I got for you today, Mr. Walters.
And for today, that's the bottom line on mortgages.